And what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Pick Swap Media and Mo Sports YouTube channels that we are talking up some NBA basketball. We are back from the All-Star break. My name is
Yep.
Sean Bernard, as always, and back with my guy, Matt Chirico. Doing this a couple times now. I believe this is round 3 for us as far as the pregame, right?
Yeah, third time's the charm here. What are we? 1-1, right? Or is it 2-0? Yeah, 1-1, right? I believe the first game you guys claimed, and the Knicks, that one blowout we were able to get on you guys. I'm excited to be back. I appreciate you having me on Pick Swap, and I'm really excited to talk some ball because this is going to be a heated matchup tonight. I mean, if anybody, all the sports bettors out there, the line is 1. So this is close. The sports books are all over this. So I'm really excited to hear your side of things from the Sixers perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is going to be a bit of a telling stretch for the Sixers team that the schedule does not get easy for the next few games. That we got Knicks tonight, obviously, then Cleveland Cavaliers tomorrow night, Milwaukee
Mhm.
Bucks on Sunday, and Boston Celtics on Tuesday. So brutal 4-game stretch for a team that really does need to stay afloat. And on the other side of the other side of things, this Knicks team kind of hanging on for dear life as far as injuries go these days. So you guys going to have enough to suit up tonight?
I mean, I don't know. Listen, if Tibbs needs some minutes, I'm available. As soon as this gets done, I could head over to MSG and tune in and throw some threes up. Not giving you the best defense, but listen, I'm gonna get my shots up. That's for sure. But no, on a serious note, it's concerning, man. It really is concerning. We mentioned it a little bit previously. The Tom Thibodeau aspect of things in this Knicks team. You have 3 guys in the top 4 in minutes per game. Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, and
Yeah.
Jalen Brunson. And it's almost like, how sustainable is this, right? Because even with all of these injuries, sure, Hart's been able to step up. Devo is stepping up. But now these guys have so much wear and tear. We saw just before the All-Star break, DiVincenzo, something with his elbow and then with his calf. It's kind of concerning that all of these minutes are piling up on these role players, and now they're getting hurt as well. And in addition to, the auspiciousness of Julius Randle and kind of the shade towards his injury and everything from that, it's got to be a little concerning, in the front office. If you're Leon Rose, if you're any of these guys evaluating this team, you have something good going for you and you just get the injury bug. It's almost like, how do we move forward? And even, I feel like the trade deadline, trading for Bogdanovich, getting Burks back, those were moves that were like, all right, we can get our guys back for the end of the season. But now, if Julius Randle can't come back, these moves look a whole lot more strange, And if OG
Yeah.
Anunoby comes back, and say he's not even 100% healthy, because he's been known to come back. When he was with Toronto, he had 4 different injuries. And this was something I saw when he first became a Knick. 4 different injuries in which he had came back. He took an extended period of time, waited until he was 110%, came back, and in 2 of those instances, missed time again after 2 to 3 games played. So it's a little concerning. I mean, the Sixers have a little bit of an injury bug as well, but not quite to the level of the Knicks. And I'm, like you said, I'm just hoping to hold on for dear life and somebody get healthy. Like, the only good news we've had is seeing Mitchell Robinson posting his country music and his feet without a boot on his Instagram story. So I'm riding high from that. But other than that, man, I don't know. I'm definitely getting a little concerned.
Yeah, pretty entertaining follow on social media, Mitchell Robinson there. So shout out him. As far as the injury bugs, I want to dig in a little bit more on that. So
Yep.
Julius Randle and OG Anunoby, kind of the most key pieces and most significant as far as both from an injury standpoint and impact standpoint on the court. OG, I feel like his surgery kind of popped out of nowhere. That remember him having an injury, and then when I got that notification, the Woj bomb of OG Anunoby has gone through surgery. I saw that March 1st was looking like a potential date that he would be reevaluated at.
Yep.
What's kind of the status or outlook from there? And for Julius Randle, you mentioned it being kind of secretive and then being a mystery around it. What is that about? Is it just something that they're keeping it close to the vest, or what's your read on both those situations?
Well, the OG Anunoby thing is really concerning, ultimately, because at the end of that game, right, that same night that we found out he had something going on with his elbow, and we were
Right.
told it was just inflammation, he shook hands of Frank Fleming. And, one thing about Frank the Tank, he's bad luck. He's a Mets fan, and he brings that team and at whatever city he's rooting for, bad luck. And once I saw him, shake hands with Frank the Tank Fleming, I knew
Tough.
something was up, man. I knew something was up. The curse was on. The gig was up. The whole shtick with OG. We had a nice little run, and now he's out. And hearing that, then it was a bone spur, and then all of a sudden, then it's surgery, and it seems to be a snowball effect right now with this Knicks team, especially now the Julius Randle thing. It was optimism that it wasn't that bad, and now it's, hey, we won't know about surgery until there's contact with that shoulder. So I really am approaching kind of this second half of the season, playing it day by day, because quite frankly, I think that's what the Knicks are doing. The head of the snake is Leon and all of those guys, but if they don't know how to steer the ship right now, I don't know if the fans have any have any idea either. And Prince, listen, Frank the Tank from Barstool Sports, he is a known loser, unfortunately. Like, the guy just loses. Whatever team he's rooting for does not see any success. And once I
And
saw him
freaks out about it. And absolutely
oh,
freaks out about it. Yeah.
yep. Yeah, he's fanned out. He's an ultimate fan, and he doesn't have a winning record when it comes to his teams, and they ultimately there's an ultimate downfall to every single one of Frank the Tank's teams, and I'm nervous that we might be next.
Yeah, I think he's a Mets, Knicks, Dolphins guy. So a little bit of,
Yeah.
That tough draw there. Tough draw all around. That there's some Mets specifically already going downhill with injuries as well this year. So plenty to dig into there. But I did want to bring up here. Let me start by just pulling up the NBA standings. So I want to have a look at this as we enter the second half of the season. So as you can see, Celtics holding strong with that number 1 seed, a 6-game lead there. I think that they're pretty cemented in their spot for the top of the conference. But below that, that's where it gets interesting, is the Cavs, the number 2 seed. I'm still not fully buying it with their 36-17 record. Not a bad team by any means, but not a team that strikes fear into my heart as I look at potential playoff matchups and how things could go. Then beyond that, the Milwaukee Bucks at 35-21, plenty going on with them that we're going to dig into with that specific conversation there. And then there are your New York Knicks sitting there with a record of 33-22, 10 games out of first place, a half game above the Sixers for the 5 seed. The Sixers in 5th with a 32-22 record. So a pretty big game tonight from a seeding standpoint. I know from the Sixers side of things that it's pretty important that during this stretch, they're able to at least stay afloat, that they're able to stay above those top 6 seeds until Joel Embiid makes his return to the floor. We did get some good news about how optimistic there is about him returning for even the end of the regular season, which is super, just a great sign to me. The fact that he's around the team at this point is all that they could hope for. But I did want to get kind of the vibe check for the Knicks. For me, it feels like they're a team that they're a little more of, you just need a ticket into the dance, and then you can compete come playoff time. How worried are you about the seeding race as you look to the postseason, or is it one of those that health is at the forefront of your mind?
Well, truthfully, I think it also depends on where the Cleveland Cavaliers stand. Because if we can head into the, if you got to choose your opponent almost, right? If it was the Cleveland Cavaliers, like you were saying, this isn't a team that I'm necessarily sold on as being an upper echelon Eastern Conference contender, right? I mean, you look at their 18-1 or, 19 or 17-2 run, and it was 4 games in which we're against teams above 500, 2 of them being Milwaukee, 1 of them in the Doc Rivers run. So it's like, how much stake are we really putting into this type of streak? Sure, yes, Donovan Mitchell's been on an impressive run, but we've seen come playoff time that these guys, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, even Jared Allen to an extent, they were unable to show up when Donovan Mitchell needed them last season. And so with the Knicks team making the upgrades that they have, going up against a team like the Cavaliers, I'm confident. But say you fall, ways away, it starts to get concerning if you have to play, a Celtics, or I'm going to go ahead and say, even if you have to play the Bucks and you're shorthanded, it might be a problem.
Yeah, and I think that's all fair, and I'm completely with you with the Cavs. And I think people have lost sight of just how dominant the Knicks really just bullied that Cavs team last year in the playoffs. That to me was like one of those like sticks with me kind of losses. That's something that from not legacy is the wrong word to use it, but just remembering that team. That's something that like is going to continue to stick with me. And we got a comment chiming in here saying stay atop. They're going to be at 3 or 4. I like being the underdogs. Look at what happened when we were the top seed. Yeah, very fair there coming from the Sixers side of things, with the loss to the Atlanta Hawks being that one year where they did secure the 1 seed. From the Sixers, it's just got to be in that top 6 seeds for me. That I just don't want no part of the play-in seed, and ultimately it's just hang on until Joel Embiid can return. And frankly, I'm not as worried about it as I think a lot of people are. That as you look a little bit down these standings, that obviously these Sixers sitting with that 5 seed, but then beyond that, the Pacers, they got to make up 2 games to catch even if one of the Pacers, Heat, and Magic can pass the Sixers team and they drop to the 6th seed, I'm still okay with that. That I don't think this Pacers team is as fearful as they looked early on in the season. I think that they've hit some youthful slumps. I don't think the Pascal Siakam addition has been as seamless as it was expected. And that Magic team, they're good. They're young. They're going to be very good. But there's a lot of mismatched parts in my mind. And I think they're at the point in their development as a team that it's time to start shifting guys around that aren't a part of your core for the guys that connect your core guys with Paolo, with Franz Wagner. There's talent on that roster, but when I watch them, it just doesn't fit together the way I think it should for me to have concerns about them climbing that high in the standings.
Right. And I agree, honestly, entirely about the Indiana Pacers because over All Star weekend, I mean, Charles Barkley was on NBA on TNT, and he was essentially trying to sell us a lemon, giving us the Indiana Pacers are at Eastern Conference contender. Don't be surprised when Tyrese Halliburton is making a run with this Pacers team. And there's just no part of it. I mean, he went on to list, he said depth, and he went on to list then Miles Turner as the depth piece, and it's like this guy's the number 2 on Indiana, right?
Right.
Essentially, defensively. And if you want to consider Siakam, the number 1 scoring option, and then Miles Turner, because, Tyrese Halliburton said it himself, he prefers passing. I don't see this Indiana team, even with Halliburton at his best, Siakam at his best, and then I guess playoff Miles Turner. Like, what are we really chasing here, right? With the Indiana Pacers, they don't seem to have an identity as a team to me. They run and gun, but their defensive prowess is very minimal, and it just, I don't understand really the perspective of, oh, this team is better than, say, the Sixers or Knicks, or even some are saying that they're a top 4 team, in the East, and I can't buy into that.
Yeah, I'm not with that either. And I am a Tyrese Halliburton guy that I love his game. I do think he's special as a player, but I think filling in the gaps for the entirety of that team, I don't fully buy it yet. But the matchup that I would love to see is a Pacers-Bucks playoff series. I do think that is the type of matchup that we've seen some bad blood between these teams, whether it's Giannis grabbing the ball, whether it's the play-in tournament, the Pacers knocking them out, all these things. I think that would be an entertaining series. And even as I kind of aren't buying the Pacers as a whole, they're still a tough out from the standpoint that they are going to run and gun. They are going to push you to your limit from a pace standpoint. And I did want to dig into this Milwaukee Bucks conversation a little bit here. So we'll start off with just kind of the general topic here is the Doc Rivers stuff has been going wild. The quotes, the memes have been terrific these past couple days, but there is some real deal internal issues within that team. And I think it's pretty clear when you watch them play. So Matt, what's kind of your vibe check on the Milwaukee Bucks at this point in time? And since Doc Rivers has taken over, how has your outlook for them this season changed?
Yeah, well, honestly, it stems way past Doc Rivers because, quite frankly, I think Adrian Griffin was a scapegoat for issues even beyond just head coaching and game planning. Right? If you look, Brook Lopez seems to not like Damian Lillard at all. And I read a Twitter thread on this. I'm not sure if you had seen, but there were instances, 5+ instances throughout the year in which Brook Lopez either looks off of Damian Lillard. The game that they played Portland, Damian Lillard had an opportunity at a game-winning shot, and Brook Lopez decided to keep the ball for himself. You saw Damian Lillard hit a game winner about a month ago. Brook Lopez is the only one from the team to walk straight to the locker room. And it just seems that there's a bit of animosity towards him, since being acquired from Portland. So I don't know. I think there's bigger locker room issues to be had with Milwaukee. But then with the Doc Rivers side of things, I mean, that's where it all blows up, right? And as a Knicks fan, and I'm sure as a Sixers fan, Eastern Conference, high seeds here, we love this, right? We love seeing one of our rivals, I guess you could say, blowing it up in their faces, because Doc Rivers, he is who he thought he is, right? We could have came on to this even previously, and we could have said, hey, Sean, how do you feel about Doc Rivers potentially coaching Milwaukee? And I guarantee you would have said, good, go ahead, have him. Not a good coach, right? And this is something that it seems like everybody has known except for the NBA. Like Doc Rivers has been living off of this Celtics ring for nearly 2 decades. This is just getting to be out of control, and GM Giannis might be worse than lead GM. That's a great comment right there, because he really might. Giannis is becoming a diva and a drama queen before our very eyes, and Doc Rivers is kind of just there, just taking the punches for right now. He's just kind of the laughing stock, and I really do think some more blame needs to be had for Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah, and I would agree. And this is a franchise that has bent their knee to Giannis's wish on several different instances now, that even the Drew Holiday trade originally, and now this Dame Lillard trade as well. And I definitely agree with your point about Adrian Griffin being dealt a bad hand, that when you go from Drew Holiday, who's one of the premier perimeter defenders across the entire NBA, to Damian Lillard, who's at the exact opposite end of the spectrum, your defense is going to get worse. There's no coaching impact that can change that. When you go from Drew Holiday to Dame Lillard as a defender, you're gonna get worse. So I think that was a key part of things, and definitely like Griffin has been perfect, but the record was far better under him than it has been under Doc to this point. And I've seen the Doc Rivers experience front and center here in Philadelphia. That I've seen the meltdowns, I've seen the lack of accountability, and it's all the same thing happening right in front of us. That
Yep.
all these quotes about this is way harder than I expected it to be, or you can't imagine like going through this. Like, dude, you have 2 of the top 20 players in the NBA on this team. This is
Absolutely.
a job. This is a job that people would bend over backwards to get, and I feel like Doc's already like setting the stage for a bad-looking playoff exit, and that's basically how I expect things to go. My confidence in the Sixers having a chance skyrocketed the second that Doc Rivers took that job.
I totally agree because Doc Rivers, I mean, we saw his lack of adjustments in Philadelphia is essentially what got him, fired. That's really what it was. Your blown leads, your constant just lack of awareness almost. I mean, and it stems straight from the top. I mean, yeah, that would be great. That comment right there. I mean, if you could go around and get some savvy head coaching, and some guy that's really more analytically based, because quite frankly, Doc Rivers, I feel like is a very big eye test type of coach. And that could have gotten you far, and maybe in the with the Celtics back then. they have Paul Reed. Don't do me like that. Yeah, I mean, listen, it comes down to like where can you go if you're Milwaukee without trying to blow it all up, right? You're kind of dancing on a landmine with all the Giannis situation because you don't want to address him as, hey, you need to be better and you need to take some accountability. But at that same time, how much more can you kind of dish out before you're a team that's out of assets?
Right. And they're pretty close to it, to be honest. Like that was a big swing, getting Damian Lillard. And obviously that's the type of fish that you're going for if you're taking these big swings. But he has not looked like the Damian Lillard that you hope to. And frankly, he could go on a heater for the second half of the season into playoffs, and all of a sudden things are perfect. That's very much in the realm of possibility. But I have not seen it thus far. And that's not something that I would be pushing my chips into bet on if that was on the table in front of me. And for the Doc Rivers thing, you kind of touched on it. It blows my mind that so many of my critiques and frustrations with Doc Rivers are like simple basketball feel conversations. Like they're not these advanced takes or whatever. It's like, dude, you've been around basketball your entire life. You had a successful playing career, have coached for 50 plus years.
You raised a son who played in the league for 11 years. How are you this bad? It doesn't make any sense.
And it is like the feel for the game of like this rotation's not working, or I got to leave this guy out there longer. It's so scripted,
even
so
down to like how simple. Oh, they have momentum. Let me call timeout.
Right.
He's oblivious. It's unreal. Seriously. And we said it earlier, like as a Knicks fan and a Sixers fan, we love it. But like, the GM Giannis is way better or way worse than LeBron has in my eyes. Yeah, Glenn Rivers eye test. Yeah, seriously. He definitely needs to have them retested. And I've been referring to him because calling him Doc, like he doesn't deserve the nickname anymore, right? And I wasn't even I went past calling him even Glenn. I was referring him to now Paul George's ex-girlfriend's father, because listen, at some point or another, you've lost your credibility within the basketball world. And Doc Rivers is about at that point because all of these articles coming out, all of these media, headlines talking about him just seem to be, them kind of kicking dirt on him while he's down and just kicking a dead horse. So Doc, honestly, you're on your way out. I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't last another 6 months there.
Yeah, and this was a guy that I thought from his tenure in Philadelphia he was ready for retirement. He's ready to ride off into the sunset. I can't believe that he's back coaching, and it is unbelievable. Whatever, I'm grateful for it. But for the Sixers and Knicks, they are at the better for it. I do want to touch a little bit on some of these comments here that there's some questions going on about Paul Reed at center. Obviously, Joel Embiid is the lead singer, as Pat Bev coined him for the Sixers team for most of this season, but they do have to survive without him. I think the goal was to get Andre Drummond at the trade deadline. It ultimately did not come together. The Bulls, it takes 2 to tango. For the people being super critical of Daryl Morey, my read on the situation from what I've read is that the Bulls were straight up unwilling until they found a replacement.
They were also unrealistic with a lot of their asking prices. I mean, we heard about the Alex Caruso thing, and they wanted a first round or 2 first-round picks for Caruso. I mean, and then you're calling about Drummond, and I would have assumed that they want at least 1 for him and then maybe a second. So it was just there was almost no way in dealing with the Chicago Bulls around the trade deadline. I personally don't fault Daryl Morey for that at all.
Yeah, I'm in the same camp that I in an ideal world they get a deal done, but you can't overpay to a point that hurts the franchise, and I think that's the position that Daryl Morey was in. So now
Right.
they are forced to survive with Mo Bamba and Paul Reed as the two options. What's your read on Paul Reed from watching on from the Knicks world?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I feel like we're faulting a guy for simply not having experience yet, right? I mean, I see almost kind of shades of early Mitchell Robinson in his game, just
Okay.
being the way he's kind of rim protecting for you guys and just being a presence down low, right? Like you guys need that type of rebounding. Sure, he's not Andre Drummond giving you, potentially 15 rebounds a game, but he has to. This comment's great. You have to make do with him right now. Right, like you have to almost mold him into what he can be and kind of look at the potential of him heading into the end of this season, right? If even if he is a project, say for these next 2 months, if you could build him into somebody that you trust giving 20, 25 minutes a game, then all of a sudden when Joel Embiid comes back, it could make his life a whole lot easier having a guy that you trust as a backup. So I don't know. Yeah, Nick, I can't believe the hate on your guy, man. I don't I
Yeah.
don't I don't like it.
Nick, the number one b-ball Paul guy out there, but I'm pretty much with him that I am a b-ball Paul guy. That I do think he's at his best, and one of the reasons that I pounded the table in favor of Paul Reed is he's so drastically different than Joel Embiid. And when you look back at the Sixers' track record of backup centers, so often it was just like a worse version of Joel Embiid. That it was the
Right.
Greg Monroes, Amir Johnson, DeAndre Jordan, Dwight Howard. The names go on and on. That these are guys that step in and try to play the same role as Joel Embiid, which you're just not for a guy that's an MVP caliber player, an all NBA first team caliber of talent. You just can't, you're going to have such a significant drop off. So what I liked about Paul Reed is he was such a drastically different style of player. He's a rim runner. He's athletic. He gets up and down. He's a guy that goes at 100%, 100 miles per hour every second he's out there. So I think that he is best as kind of a changeup off the bench, but this is his time to shine, and this is the reason that you pay him. That money comes with expectation in the NBA. The Sixers did ultimately step up and match that offer sheet to pay him the big bucks this year. Still not that big of a bucks for the people that was talking like it was an overpay, but I think he's been better lately, and I do think he's a guy that is improving. I think everyone was a little frustrated that with that new contract, that the hope was that he would start to slide into a role where he can play next to Joel Embiid for moments, where he
Right.
could develop a more consistent jump shot, a three-point shot. He is a guy that shot 40% at the G League from the three-point line. So there's room for optimism. He hasn't quite taken those strides, but if he balls out during this period of time without Joel Embiid, which is absolutely still on the table, that's the reason you paid him, and it ultimately proves his worth right there.
Yeah, and I mean, come playoff time, that would be a great asset to have a guy from the three that could stretch the floor like that. It really could come down to him getting valuable playoff minutes. If Joel Embiid, I mean, you just don't know how. Even the optimism of him coming back is fantastic, but you don't know how the knee still could hold up, right?
Yeah.
Like he could go out there and have some type of soreness, and in that case, again, you need Paul Reed to once again step up. So I really think it's kind of you're so used to and kind of spoiled by Joel Embiid doing everything for your team. It's like, why can't this guy do it? And it's like, listen, Joel is one of one and he's the MVP for a reason. I think B-Ball Paul deserves his respect. And you just have to let a guy let him cook. Let him
Yeah.
cook for a little bit and see what he's capable of, in some valuable minutes with the Sixers.
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest factor that I would say that is room for optimism in the second half is Buddy Hield. That was the big swing. That was the trade deadline addition, and a guy that's been a forever almost Sixer that we've talked about year in and year out for 5-6 years now about how perfect the fit he would be on the Sixers team. What were your thoughts from afar as the Sixers traded for Buddy Hield and added him to this team?
Well, I originally went into it thinking that Joel Embiid wouldn't be a part of this team at the end of the season because that was kind of the look, right? Everything kind of seemed bad. It's almost the opposite of the Julius Randle situation. Everything
Right.
seemed bad at first, and now it's just been optimism ever since. And from this perspective, it was like, okay, they're just trying to get by. But now it's like, all right, you have the dynamic athleticism, finishing ability, facilitation of, Tyrese Maxey, and the way he's been able to elevate the team around him. Now you add in a guy like Buddy Hield, who, if he gets on a heater, it's very dangerous. If
Oh, yeah.
he's somebody hot from three, and that's not even mentioning, the gravitational pull he'll have is going to leave guys like Kelly Oubre open, who another guy, microwave badge on 2K for a reason, right? Like these are guys that get hot quick. And I think it was a calculated move because with or without Joel Embiid, it was going to make the team better. And
Yeah.
now with him in the picture a little bit more, it's almost like, all right, I'm sure Joel is probably just licking his lips, waiting to get back because Buddy Hield's a guy that's going to be able to take a lot of pressure. You're not going to be able to double team Joel nearly as much when you have a sharpshooter like Buddy at the 3. And I loved him since the Oklahoma days and all of, the whole hype when he was in college. Like I was
Oh, yeah.
bought in, and maybe he didn't live up to the aspirations that people thought he would, but I still think he's a valuable asset, and that was a great move at the deadline.
Absolutely. I'm all in on Buddy. That Daryl Morey said they got the best player at the trade deadline, and I think they're right about that. That I think that is Buddy Hield. And he checks 2 boxes in the way of, you kind of mentioned it here, but he helps the team stay afloat in Joel Embiid's absence, that he is a guy that can generate offense, fill up the score sheet, pour in points from the perimeter in a way that they just desperately needed at this point in time. And number 2, he's a ceiling raiser for this team when Joel Embiid does return to the floor. That when you think of the most dynamic versions of the Sixers offense, it's when you got a guy like JJ Redick running off dribble handoffs and having opportunities in the 2-man game. Buddy Hield can do the exact same thing. And frankly, he's a more complete basketball player than anyone that we've had in that shooter's role. Think about the guys like Marco Bellinelli, Seth Curry, JJ Redick I mentioned. There's more to Buddy Hield's game that we've seen the playmaking. He had 10 assists in that last game before the trade deadline with the Miami Heat, essentially running point guard for this team, which allowed Tyrese Maxey to play off ball, which I also think just another example of the versatility that happens with this team. So I think this improved the Sixers team far more than I think the perception of people kind of brought it on to be. And I do think that when it's all said and done, like Buddy Hield, when he comes back, is an absolute ceiling raiser for this team, and I think takes them up a step in terms of a full real deal contender.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been kind of petitioning for it for a while, campaigning for Tyrese Maxey to get some off-ball treatment. And finally you get a guy like Buddy Hield who's going to take some of that pressure off of him. It just seems like it was the perfect fit. I mean, like you said, you've been talking about it for years and years now, and the fit is as good as you thought it would be. So that's got to be super satisfying from a Philly perspective. And this comment here, I want to hear your thoughts on the addition of Kyle Lowry as well. How do you feel that he fits? Because obviously he's not what he used to be, but do you still think he's at the level where he can contribute, especially come playoff time, to what you guys have going on?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what Kyle Lowry fully looks like. That I've liked everything that he said publicly, talking about that he knows his job. My first priority is to make sure Tyrese keeps getting better, things like that. He's obviously a Philadelphia kid, a guy that went to Villanova, grew up in the city, all these things. So there is a cool homecoming moment. His announcement that he was coming to the Sixers was very cool, with the coming home in the background and some high school highlights coming in there. So I am happy for like the feel good story. I've been pretty negative about Kyle Lowry as a whole. That I do think there's no doubt about it. His best days are behind him. He's 37 years old and frankly has looked it lately. But all you're asking for is like 8 to 12 minutes a game. If you can get that from him. I was a very pro Patrick Beverley guy during his time here. And overall, he frankly outplayed my expectations of him from a pretty significant margin as far as what he brought offensively, running the team, all those things. So I was frustrated by the standpoint of moving on from Pat Bev without like a real replacement. That at that point in time, it was looking like Campaign was the guy, which in my mind is a huge step down. Kyle Lowry, if he's the best version of himself, is better than Patrick Beverley. I'm not going to debate that. My concern is that version of Kyle Lowry is just no longer here. We'll see. I think the biggest thing to take away is that Kyle Lowry is Nick Nurse's guy, that when you kind of connect the dots between head coach and point guard, which there is a pretty linear relationship there, more so than most positions. Like Pat Bev is a Doc Rivers guy. That's where he got his start, made most of his money. Kyle Lowry is a Nick Nurse guy. So if Nick Nurse trusts him, if that's the guy that he wants running the second unit or teaching Tyrese Maxey, I can live with it and get behind it, but I'm not pounding the table as excited in the way I think some people are.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, you get kind of infatuated with what they used to be. I remember seeing towards the deadline, somebody posted, I can't remember who exactly it was, but the highlight tape had Kobe in it. And I was just like, listen, we got to, we got to draw. Yes, Gordon Hayward. It was Gordon. And I was like, listen, we got to relax a little bit, right? We're getting a little carried away here. But halftime, this is exactly actually what I meant by his similarities to Mitchell Robinson. To me, he defends a little bit too much with his hands, and that's exactly what Mitch did when he first came into the league as well. And it's really tough when you're a big guy, you're kind of lanky, you have that type of frame. Hopefully Nick Nurse can tap in, being a more defensive-minded coach. He could tap in and help him use that athleticism and use that frame to now be a better defender and not use his hands. So Lowry knows how to run Nick Nurse's team in key moments. I mean, hey, if you could throw Lowry in and he could draw you a valuable charge late in a game, I mean, that's essentially the best that he's good, useful for at this day and age. So I really think that Lowry, despite, being over the hump, being a little bit older, I mean, it can't hurt at this point, right? And he's a great mentor for Maxi. You're bringing him home. The morale in the locker room is boosted. It's more than just meets the eye, I feel like, with Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, definitely. And I did want to elaborate on my point a little bit about moving Maxi off ball, because Kyle Lowry's another guy that opens up that potential to play next to each other in lineups. I don't mean this in any bit as a slight on Tyrese Maxey. That frankly, he's proved capable of being a point guard in a way that I wasn't confident he could going into this season.
Right.
There's just so much on his shoulders. The dude's 23 years old, first-time All-Star, and especially Buddy Hield has helped a ton since he's come to this team. But when you looked at those couple games beforehand without Joel Embiid and without really any other legitimate offensive options, with Kelly Oubre and Tobias Harris as your 2 and 3 from a scoring standpoint, there was just so much thrown on Maxey's shoulders that he's has to be the primary playmaker, the number one scoring option. When you're watching the way the teams defend him, throwing 2 and 3 at him every time he crosses half court, forcing the ball out of his hands, by allowing him to play off ball, kind of create some off ball looks, some catch and shoot opportunities, running off pin downs, running off motion. These are all things that are ways of creating easy looks for him in a way that he just isn't getting right now. So I don't mean it as a downside of Maxey. I mean it more of a response to the defense and the way people are guarding him, that I think it can open up his game a ton if he doesn't have to work so hard to get every shot. So that's kind of my point in that. And to jump in, shout out to Gracie here saying that Lowry is a great passer and floor general at this age. Yeah, that's what we're asking for. And we also know that he's a more willing and capable shooter than Pat Bev. And I do get the argument that when there's a Joel Embiid-centric team, kind of the three-point shooting is all that you're looking for with these surrounding guards.
Exactly, man. When Joel Embiid comes back and he can, it's just a drive and kick for him. Being as big as he is, he's going to draw a lot of defensive gravity. And as soon as you have a guy, you have Tyrese Maxey or Buddy Hield, right? And then you're not even tapping in to the shooting of your guys' threes. I mean, it's kind of deadly, to be quite honest. And as a Knicks fan, Philly isn't a team that I would want to have to face in the first round. I think despite what the record says, right, Cleveland is much more appealing to probably anybody in the East than the 76ers with Joel Embiid on that squad. So I don't know. I think you guys are in a pretty good spot. But at that same time, if the New York Knicks can get healthy, it could get real scary in the East for everybody else as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I do want to shift gears a little bit back towards tonight's game. But first, real quick, the All-Star break. Some hot takes from everybody floating out there. What was your overall review of the weekend? I know we had Jalen Brunson out there doing his thing. Cool to see him. Competed in the three-point contest, the All-Star game as well. What were your thoughts on All-Star weekend as a whole?
Well, I think after about 2018 or 2019, it became the cool thing to hate on the All-Star game. Now, I think sure, it isn't what it used to be, and it might be because we're all grown up now. That might be part of it. We're not young kids anymore, all infatuated with these NBA superstars. And sure, maybe it isn't your favorite player in the dunk contest. I don't necessarily think it was ever all star-studded, lineups in the dunk contest, though. There was never more than one or two guys that was really popping off the list of names. So the All-Star weekend, I think it gets a little bit too much hate. The All-Star game was entertaining to me. I mean, even though there's no defense, I mean, what do you expect, right? We're hearing all about these incentivized, ways of making this better. It's listen, at the end of the day, the players, if it's not directly correlated with their team, and even if, they are incentivized, their team isn't going to want them out there, putting in full effort. So it's what are we really getting at here? I think we're beating a dead horse with the whole All-Star weekend is washed, All-Star weekend is out. I think we need to just kind of embrace it for what it is and maybe add in, they added, Prince is saying here, the Steph and Sabrina, maybe add in a 1v1, King of the Hill type of thing just to mix it up a little bit. That doesn't mean that the whole weekend has to be scrapped. Dunk contest, 3-point, and the All-Star game are all signatures. Let's just add in little tidbits to make it an even better weekend.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. Even things like it was so clear that Luka Doncic and Nikola Jokic had no interest in that game. They're just throwing up whatever. Let them play horse. Have a horse game between Jokic and Luka. That would be entertaining. That would be fun to watch, and they would do some cool things. So I do think the NBA should lean into that side of things a little bit. The King of the Hill 1v1 games, that would be so entertaining, and guys have to get fired up about that. And I do totally agree with Prince's comment here that the Steph versus Sabrina was the highlight, and he stopped teaming up Scotty Barnes with Tyrese Maxey. Hilarious stuff there. Yeah, Scotty Barnes did not do well in the skills competition, nor did he in the shooting in the year prior. What's your feel on Scotty Barnes? Because I'm not a big Scotty Barnes guy.
I'm not sold on Scotty. I'm sorry. I haven't seen anything from Scotty. Like, I'm a big kind of dog in me type of fan, right? Like,
Mhm.
you could probably not have the best skill set, but if I see you have that dog in you, I feel like there's potential and room to grow. Scotty Barnes, I feel like, was given this God-given talent, and he's just never like collected any dog within him. And I feel like that's really what's missing in Toronto is that they have some talented guys, but they have no dogs, right? I think this was a conversation that was on
Pat
NBA
Bev.
on T. Yeah,
Pat
right.
Bev was saying it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was saying as well. It kind of comes down to like, oh, they were talking about pups, right? When they were mentioning Emmanuel quickly, R.J. Barrett, like, oh yeah, they're like they got a little, but they got some pups. They got pups over there, and then OG Ananobi, that's a dog, right? That's a guy. He's a dog. R.J. Barrett was supposed to be a defensive dog, but he never lived up to that. Now
Mhm.
you have a guy like Ananobi, rugged, tough defender. I don't know. I see why Ananobi didn't get along with the guys over in Toronto. I'll just say that. And then in addition, I wanted to just mention Anthony Edwards shooting with the left hand was, I mean, you got to say something about that. If you're Adam Silver, like, we can't have you disrespecting the event, taking place during All-Star weekend. I know it's fun and it's all jokes for him, but at that same time, who's going to take it seriously at all if the players don't even take like that type of event seriously?
Yeah, I agree with that. And it does the tone is set with stuff like that. That once there starts to be like things like that, and then nobody cares, and it is what it
Exactly.
is.
And
And
what's
I'm
the
more,
award? What's the
yeah,
award at that point?
yeah, you're right. And I am more one of those guys that like I don't get too fired up about it. To me, like being frustrated comes with expectation. I just didn't have much expectation for the game as a whole going into it. So I think
Exactly.
I was mentally prepared for it, but definitely disappointing. I would like for some sort of effort for it to be cleaned up. But at the end of the day, I think it kind of is what it is at this point. And we're here for kind of the true show of the NBA season for this final stretch. So first game out of the All-Star break tonight between the Knicks and Sixers. Are you expecting any sort of rust from the Knicks side of things?
I don't want to say rust because it's the same like 5, 6 guys we've had going this whole little stretch here. They might have had a little bit of break. Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson got some podcasting in. Cool. But I don't really expect any rust. I mean, Tibbs probably had them working out 8-hour shifts in the practice facility. So I think they're going to still come out and be the same, have that same type of tenacity. But I just don't know what to expect with all these injuries. Like, it really is that concerning to me. Isaiah Hartenstein, that's a concerning injury. That's somebody, like
Yeah.
I said earlier, you expect these role players to step up and play big minutes, but then their wear and tear grows. So, the wear and tear of Hartenstein, DiVincenzo, now Bogdanovich, who's had injury history, it definitely is concerning. I'm taking this Knicks team. I said day by day earlier, but right now it's not even game by game. It's quarter by quarter because you just never know what's around the corner at this point.
Yeah, and I saw the Mikal Bridges popping on the podcast with Brunson and Hart there. Do you guys have as much of a wandering eye from Mikal Bridges as the Sixers certainly do? Because I know from all accounts, he is a guy that's obviously a Philadelphia dude as well. Still tweets
Yep.
about the Phillies nonstop. And obviously there was the draft day mess up where the Sixers drafted him, then traded him for Zaire Smith. We all know the story
Right.
there.
Boy.
Are the Knicks in the same boat of if he drops free that it is all out, go get him?
I'd agree. And I think that's not only from a standpoint of he's a great fit for the team, but I mean, obviously Villanova. That's it. That's all that
Right,
has
right.
to be said is that these guys, the chemistry you see when you add a guy like DiVincenzo, I mean, it's almost like attribute boosts, right? It's crazy to say, but the chemistry you have with these guys really does make a big difference. And this is the first Knicks team I've ever seen in my lifetime have this type of ability and this type of chemistry with one another to where I think, hey, just off of that alone, they might not be the most talented, but I think off of that alone, you can reach that upper tier of the Eastern Conference. And I think Mikal Bridges, him being a star, because I don't think he's superstar material yet, but he is a star in my eyes.
Mhm.
I think him being a star on top of, the Villanova connection, that really sets you apart. And at that point, man, don't let that happen because I would be hard to deal with on some of these lives. I can't lie to you. I'd be coming out parading.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I do think Mikal Bridges is that caliber of dude and a dude that just fits seamlessly on every single team. And when he
Right.
brings the defensive side of the ball, a true wing, a 3-and-D style player with more to him than just that, he is just perfect. And it is still frustrating to sit there as a Sixers fan for him literally to be drafted by the team and then sent away right away. And Prince chiming in here saying Brunson out here tampering. Felt like Maxey was too at the All-Star game. I agree with that. That was one of my bigger takeaways from All-Star Weekend is how much Tyrese Maxey belonged. And I saw the video of LeBron dapping him up, saying how he was proud of him. Saw in the way that there was a little bit of gravity to Tyrese Maxey. And that was pretty cool to see of just like he is a guy that I think has more respect from his peers than I think is really the case from a national perspective when looked at it, how talented as a player he is. And I
Right.
think seeing that on full display was very cool to see. And I do think a big deal from looking forward to bringing in guys that want to play here, that we've talked so much about this cap space plan for the Sixers, that it's a blank slate for what this roster could be come this offseason. That's great news that when Tyrese Maxey is a guy that commands that respect, especially when a guy like Joel Embiid is not quite as fluent in having those type of relationships, being as forward facing. So very cool there.
I was going to say, man, if it comes down to it and Joel Embiid say, the injuries continue, he goes up in age as well. I mean, at some point or another, you look at it almost like, hey, Tyrese Maxey, there's a lot of gravitation from these other stars in playing with Tyrese Maxey. A lot of these guys, and right there, a guy like Kevin Durant, somebody who's always looking for grass where it's greener, right?
Yeah.
Like if he looks at a guy like Maxey and is like, damn, I want to play with that, it's a lot more appealing than Joel Embiid kind of being, as rugged and stubborn as we've known him to be. And, sure, that's great because Philly fans love him and that's that Philly identity. But at the same time, Tyrese Maxey being buddy with a lot of these other guys could prove to be valuable in the end for the Sixers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that Kevin Durant point there, that Kevin Durant was asked about the next faces of the NBA, guys that he could see kind of carrying the torch for as him, Steph Curry, LeBron, as they start to ride off into the sunset. And Tyrese Maxey was among these 6 names that he spit out there, saying Tyrese Halliburton, Anthony Edwards, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, forget the other 2 that he threw in there. But those are high praise to talk about him amongst those names. So very cool. I would say that's a success from Tyrese's standpoint, from a league-wide standpoint, and we will see how things shake out from there. But we do have to continue focusing on tonight a little bit. Knicks versus Sixers. How you feeling?
Yeah.
Do you think the Knicks pull this one out?
Well, last time I came on and I said I don't think we win this game, and we blew you guys out. So I think I'm going to go ahead and say, due to our injuries, I think we lose this game. And then I'm just going to hope for a Brunson masterclass because realistically, that's the only way that we would win this game. I just don't see that or DiVincenzo, getting hot from 3. But like we were saying earlier, I mean, the injuries, the lack of depth right now, it really just seems like we could have used an extra week for an All-Star break. It just, I don't know. I'm feeling, I think the spread should have been closer to like 4 or 5 personally.
Wow. I like that. I feel good about the Sixers odds tonight, and I like to hear you say that there is going to be a bit of this hungry dog runs faster mentality that I think that the Sixers team knows the situation, that they have to find a way to scrape to slightly above 500 basketball until Joel Embiid returns. That's all it's about, is keeping your head above water, not allowing yourself to slide down the standings, and especially when there's a back-to-back tomorrow, Celtics and Bucks coming Sunday and Tuesday. These are tough games that you can't afford to let any opportunity slip. So when you're facing another Eastern Conference team that's half game ahead of you in the standings, these are ones that you have to capitalize on. So there will be some fresh legs, more so than has been the case for most of this year for guys like Tyrese Maxey. So I'm feeling good about the Sixers taking it home tonight. I'm predicting, I'll throw my final score out there. Sixers 114, Knicks 109. I think it's a little close, but I think the Sixers do get the job done.
I like that final score. I'm going to go 106 Sixers and Knicks 98. I don't think we clear 100 points tonight if we can't get, we were talking about the rust a little bit. I don't think they necessarily come out rusty, but I just don't think we have an offensive rhythm, right? Without a lot of these guys, it's kind of hard. I want to see a Maxey Brunson shootout. That would be fantastic, and that would be extremely entertaining. B-Ball Paul over under 10 rebounds. I mean, who's his matchup right now? Precious Achiuwa, right? Man, don't get me wrong. Precious has stepped up. But now, again, like I was saying previously, you're expecting big, major minutes out of a guy like Precious Achiuwa. Sure, he's came in and played his role great, but now you want, multiple back-to-back weeks of just being our number one set. Like, I can't get down with it, man. I'm definitely Brunson is cold, and you want someone on him specifically. Oh, you meant cold as in he's good. I thought you were saying he's good. No, Brunson. I was always high on Brunson, even in the Dallas days. So it's really cool to see him kind of flourish in New York. But I think the only way that we get this game is if he's dropping 40.
I'll ask you this: Tyrese Maxey or Jalen Brunson? Who would you rather have?
I gotta go with Jalen Brunson. Even if it was the case, like even at the beginning of the season when Tyrese Halliburton was on a heater, you wouldn't hear me admit that he's better than Jalen Brunson. And I still think Jalen Brunson's better than Halliburton now, like looking back and seeing like how Halliburton's leveled out and watching his game from a little bit closer of a lens this year. I still think I'm taking Jalen Brunson over him. But it's extremely close. And the one thing that Tyrese Maxey does have is a few years. So if
Yeah.
you take, say, 20, Jalen Brunson, I believe is 26, you take 26-year-old Jalen Brunson, and you take 26-year-old Tyrese Maxey, the ceiling of Maxey is very encouraging. So you would
Yeah.
have to probably go that route. But for right now, if I need one to win me a game, I have to go Jalen Brunson. He's been there in the big scene before in the playoffs, even with Nova as well. I would have to go with him. It's
Yeah.
close though. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I agree. And Nick chiming in saying I'd rather have Brunson than Maxey myself. Sorry, Sean. I don't disagree. At this point in each of their careers, 23-year-old Tyrese Maxey. And I think in a lot of our heads, like Tyrese Maxey's looked at as a finished product in a way that he
Yeah.
just straight up isn't yet. That like think about what he could be 4 years from now when he's 27. It's so encouraging. But at this point in time, I don't disagree that Jalen Brunson is that dude. He's a guy that he has this grown-up maturity to his game that I really respect, and it's fun to watch, especially when it comes to the crunch time of decision making, getting to his spots. And he's the smallest dude on the floor, and it never matters. The way that he
Right.
pivots, gets to his spots, it's very entertaining to watch. And he is a guy that's a playoff riser who's got it done in the postseason, stepped up, elevated his game, elevated the team's game. So definitely no slight on Jalen Brunson for myself here, but I did think it was an interesting conversation to have. And I did want to bring this up from Gracie here as well. I hope Nick throws Baisley out here to see what he's got. Plus that Ricky is friends with him. Not sure how much you've checked in on either of these guys. This has been one of the go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say Ricky Council's been catching eyes. His
Yeah.
gameplay, not just his explosiveness, but now you guys are finding ways, and I think this is a big part of why Nick Nurse was such a good fit for you guys, is because Nick Nurse knows how to get the best out of his players. A guy like Doc is not doing that and not putting his guys in the best position to see success. So I think right now, I agree with these comments. You gotta throw your guys out there in a testing phase. I know you want to win games, but when you're in a testing phase, you gotta throw them out there and see what you have and what you can work with come playoff time. Because like you're saying, even if you fall below a team like the Pacers or the Magic, it's not necessarily do or die. And I still think you guys got, a good shot. And Nick said it, free the coats.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Blue Coats did play earlier today. Shout out Darius Baisley, participated in that game, finished with 22 and 11 in that matchup, and then traveled right up the turnpike, hopping into Philadelphia and getting ready to play a game. So cool that took place and that he will have a chance. I would like to see him at least get a real chance at him. I do think he's on a 10-day contract, and I feel like this is like a straight up tryout for him, that if he can play well, he's a guy that has had more NBA success than most guys that you can say in that situation. Started 118 games at the NBA level with the Oklahoma City Thunder there, played over 200. So kind of rare that he's just been sitting in the G League in his specific situation, but he is a style of player that this team doesn't have. So I would love to see him. And you touched on it. Ricky Council IV has been absolutely awesome. When I talked about my frustration for the trading of Jaden Springer and just giving him away, I'm more so frustrated by the standpoints that he was given to the Celtics is probably the thesis of my frustration there. But the reasoning for that, the driving force, was this guy right here. They were watching Ricky Council ball out in practice and saying, you know what, maybe we paved the way to giving him an opportunity to get more minutes, and the team is benefiting for it. So I genuinely believe his energy, his effort level, I've seen people call him the guard version of B-Ball Paul, which I can see a little bit of. But I do think his energy and his effort level, it is infectious to this team, and it's impactful. So I expect to see some Ricky Council tonight, and especially from the fact that he did not suit up in that Blue Coats game earlier, which I think is more telling for how the organization views him.
Yeah, so we got our final score predictions out. Let's just put it, where are each of our teams seated at the end of the season?
All right. Sixers, I'm gonna say they stay at the 5 seed. That I don't see a world where they drop all the way into the playing game. I just don't think it's going to be that. I think there's a chance where they drop to 6, but I think that this team is going to be better than a lot of people are giving them credit. That I think Tyrese can do enough to keep this team afloat. Buddy Hield is a real factor, that there are guys that can step up. They're not a nobody. And while the opening stretch is rough, there is a stretch where they got the Hornets and then a couple other beatable teams where I'm feeling okay about. So I'm going to say stick at the 5 seed for the Sixers.
All right. Yeah. And I'm thinking, the thing is, like, this is going to sound insane, but the high end, like, there's a middle ground of being a 2 seed, and then the Knicks can also be a 6 seed. Neither would shock me, because you could get your guys back and instantly the Knicks are a top 2-3 team in the Eastern Conference, or we can continue on this, we don't know, being in the dark type of thing. And then all of a sudden you're losing more ball games than, you really wanted to or expected. So I think the ceiling for the Knicks is that 2 seed, but the floor, I'm going to have to put at the 5.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And we will ultimately see when they check Rock play for the second half of the season. Nick saying he's got Knicks Nuggets in the finals right now. Wow, interesting take there. Gracie chiming in said Knicks 3, Sixers 4. I'm totally cool with that.
Respect.
yeah, maybe drop the Cavs to the 5 in that situation. That'd be cool. I would love that for sure.
Right.
But before we wrap up here, Matt, what else you got going on these days over at Mo Sports and everything else that you've been working hard on?
So this past weekend, I actually got to go shoot a little bit of a workout with this guy. His name's Anthony Gilks, and shout out to my guy Dean, who works part with the Eagles and some of the players over there in Philly. And Anthony actually trains. He's a celebrity personal trainer. He trains Joe Tsai and also Michael Strahan. So
Wow.
he's right over in that Upper West Side. And I got to go hit a workout with him. He's an IFBB pro, and it was just an incredible experience. Getting to not only film and like practice my videography work, but then also pick his brain about these athletes. Like I'm a New York guy through and through, so I grew up watching a guy like Michael Strahan and getting to hear about like his experience in the gym and how he approaches his workouts and whatnot. It just really it's funny to say, but it fired me up in a way. Like it really got me like, this is why we do what we do. And I'm sure like you get those times where you're fired up to just hop on the mic, right? And it got me fired up just to sit there and take videos of these guys working out. And that's really been it, man. We got a lot of stuff cooking, a lot of content coming up. I can't exactly release all of it just yet, but just know that we got a lot cooking. And when it all comes out, it's going to be, in a bunch, and we're going to have a lot of stuff for these consumers to kind of indulge on. So that's what I got going on. How about Pick Swap? Is everything going good over there?
Yeah, love to hear that. And make sure you guys are tapping into Matt across all platforms there. He's got his hands
Thank you,
a little
brother.
bit of
Thank
everywhere.
you.
So
Yeah.
awesome stuff. And yeah, over on PickSwap Media, I'll be live immediately following the game as well for a little post-game show. We teaming up with the guys over on the Edge of Philly Sports for some of the stuff over there. My guys, Mr. Crockpot, Tiago, a couple other people in the mix there. So we'll be back on that. Dropped a couple content throughout the week. Did a little Darius Baisley breakdown, some Doc Rivers full thoughts as well.
Nice.
You can check that out on the channel. And yeah, as well as to check out Sixers Digest as well. Got some content coming out there. So dropped a little video today hinting at the Kevin Durant, Tyrese Maxey comments, everything there. So
nice.
You guys can follow me on Twitter as well at Sean_Bernard1. I will be tweeting away throughout the Sixers game and keep grinding away as much as I can for sure.
Hell yeah, brother. I love to hear and I love to see all your guys' success. And just know anything you guys need, Mo Sports, anything that I could do for you, just reach out and I would be glad to help. Always showing love, and I always appreciate every time you guys go out of your way. And even the comments right now from Gracie, like, we appreciate you guys tapping in. It means way more than you guys know, and I can't be grateful enough for the platform. So I appreciate you having me on, and I'm excited to continue to see how both of our teams grow in this second half of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And we may very well get a playoff series between the Sixers and Knicks as well. Very much on the table. We will see until that point. Matt, shout out to you for chopping it up with me, hopping on. Shout out to everybody for tuning in. Make sure that you're smashing the subscribe button, like button, wherever you are, wherever you're viewing this. And we'll be back next time right here on PickSwap Media and right here on Mo Sports.
Yes.